Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
So I am so excited to have with me today Nissar Ahamed. We have known each other now for going on 4 years, I think. He is the founder and CEO of CareerMetis.com, an award-winning career publication dedicated to helping job seekers and freelancers with advice and resources. Also the host of the Career Insider podcast, co-host the C.A.R.E podcast. So Nissar, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on the show, Virginia. I know, as you mentioned, we have known each other for a few years. We have done multiple content partnerships. So I'm so happy to be on your show and discuss some ideas that'll help job seekers.
Yeah, no, so you heard the intro that I just shared with everyone. I'd love to know a little bit about how you came to found CareerMetis and all of the podcasts and the resources you offer. How did that come about?
It's been a very non-linear journey. Speaking of CareerMetis itself, I spent most of my career in sales until 2018. I was in sales. I was working in different roles. And somewhere around 2013, 2014, I started working for Robert Half Technology, which is, as many people know, it's one of the largest staffing or recruiting firms. And I worked there for a few months, and I realized that one of the challenges with most recruiting firms is they're focused very much on the employer, the company, and less on the candidates. So unless you make the cut as a candidate, you won't necessarily get all the help you need. So I realized there was a gap. And that prompted me to start CareerMetis, thinking that there are other people like me who have been in situations like mine, candidates who can get some help. And just to add a little bit to the backstory, in my 20s, like any young professional, I struggled like everybody else, to get new jobs, to get promoted, being laid off, applying to job boards and not getting much answer. So I did what most people would do. Yes, I did try to do it by myself, and I found it frustrating and long. I did what a lot of proactive people would do. I read blogs. I listened to YouTube interviews. Even at one point, I hired a coach. Career coach who helped me really well in crafting my message, negotiating salary, and so on. And it was a great investment. So I got to a point where I got good as a candidate, and it became predictable. So I got confident that if something were to happen to my job, I could actually look for a new job easily. So then I started sharing that advice with my friends and family. Anytime they were going for an interview, I would tell them what to do. They would come back and say it worked. And at that point, some of them suggested, and I was not expecting anything from them. I was just helping them because, I just wanted to share. At that point, some of my closest friends came to me and said, "Hey, you should start writing about this." And I brushed it off. And after some self-doubt and after persuasion from my friend and also me persuading myself, I started a blog, and I started really actively writing in June 2015. So it all worked out. My personal experience, my experience helping others, my experience working in recruiting. I started sharing all those ideas on a blog, and it's been 4.5 years. And yeah, it's been a great journey so far. And I enjoy it. I enjoy sharing the ideas, and I find that others have enjoyed reading it, and some have enjoyed contributing content as well.
Well, what I love about your blog and the podcast is you just curate content from so many people. It's sort of one-stop shopping. So for those people that are avid readers and really need free job search guidance. It's just a tremendous resource.
And can I add?
Yeah.
Mentioned the whole idea of curating. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I'll be honest, even when I started, I had this imposter syndrome. I thought to myself, going to listen to me. What do I know? But then I started writing, pushed past those fears. Then people started reaching out to me and say, I want to contribute to your blog. I want to be a guest author. And that's when I realized, as anyone who maintains any website, creating content takes time. Why not leverage other people's experience and their ideas? But at the same time, the whole idea of curation, I found it really interesting is because I don't have all the answers and I will never claim that I do. But if I can get other people to share their ideas, experts like you who have come on the podcast, who have shared content, we've also done an interview series, then I can make it like a resource that's just not one voice, but a series of voices from tons of people who have experience. So that's why I took the curation or publication route rather than just making it a blog about myself. And I'm glad I took that journey because, to be honest, I'm learning a lot as well. I've shaped my experience in changing careers and job search and all that. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I quickly wanted to comment on that. So thank you.
No, and I am with you. To me, it truly takes a village. I certainly don't know everything there is to learn. And that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast is I wanted to bring in other experts to help expand my knowledge and expand theirs. And to me, it's really enriched my business as well and my knowledge. So you read content, you interview all sorts of job search and career experts. And I'd love to hear from you sort of what do you see as a couple of major challenges facing those that are looking to make a career pivot after, maybe a long time, maybe it's been a long time since they've job hunted. What do you see that they're facing?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought the idea of career pivot. And we are at a time where if you look at resource-wise, technology-wise, it's one of the best times to make career changes. If you go back 2 generations ago, even 30 years ago, it was very difficult to make a drastic career change unless you went back to school. So the good news is anyone, and I'm a good example of that. I've gone from software sales to a blogger to running a marketing team for a startup to now doing freelancing and running my own online business. So I've done a lot of all these things I mentioned, I've done in the course of 3 to 4 years. And if I can do it, others can do it as well. However, the major challenge, I would say the top 3 things would be not knowing. Number one is a lot of candidates, a lot of young professionals, even mid-career professionals who are in their 40s or 50s, they do not know it is possible. So when I say to people, this is what I've done, a vast majority of them are really shocked. And that for me is a big concern because people need to be aware that if you don't like your career, if you don't like your job, you can make a switch, and others have done that. And I'm sure you can find someone in your circle who has done that. So there's a sense of awareness that is lacking because that's not something a lot of people talk about, right? And a lot of advice out there is all about job search, resume, and interviewing and salary negotiation. These are all valid, by the way, and I'm not discounting that. They are very, very important. But there needs to be more content about career shifters or career pivoters. So it's a lot of, if anyone listening to this, they should know that it is possible. And so that's number one. The second challenge is not knowing how to do because not a lot of people openly share how they did it. So it's hard to find that information. Yes, you can do some search and you can listen to there are specific podcasts you can listen to and you can get that idea. So not knowing enough on how to do it is a challenge as well. So now we are talking about the tactics. How do you actually go about switching from one step or one career to another? And it's not impossible. It is simple, but it is challenging. And But if other people have done it, I'm sure you can do it as well. That's the message I want to leave the audience.
That you bring up such a good point, and I think that lack of understanding that career change is possible is really common in my generation. I'm 50. My first career change I achieved by going back to school. Because, you're right, that's the way you did it. And then the subsequent ones I did by the seat of my pants, not that there were obstacles, but you're right, the tactics, people are getting better about talking about it, but it is, as recently as I feel like 10 years ago, there was nothing out there on how to make a pivot. But because it's challenging, but it is not insurmountable once you have the knowledge that you can do, that it is possible, and you have the tactics to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is possible. It's just awareness and doing some research, and you should be able to apply those things that you learn.
No, I love that. So is there something that you have noticed that sort of catches those career changers off guard once they do get started, or when they're thinking about it?
Yeah, I think recently, I think, we're recording this at the beginning of 2020, and for the next decade, I'm not an expert, but based on what I've seen and read and experienced, I think we are looking at the decade where it's going away from the degree-based economy to a skill-based economy. And I'll tell you why I'm talking about this in a moment. So a lot of people make the mistake of relying too much on linearity, meaning they want to go from step, because the whole idea of a career path is you take one step after another, right? You start at the bottom, entry level, then you become an associate, then you become a professional manager and all that. But I think there is the rise of the non-linear career path, and I think you just gave an example about yourself and myself as well. So in order to combat that, I would recommend focus on skill acquisition, focus on adding more skills, and it's simpler than ever to learn new skills. And as you acquire,
cheaper than going back to school. Right.
Exactly. And that's what and actually you bring up a good point. I don't want to discount education. I don't want to discount degree. Listen, if you wanted to become a nurse or a doctor, you definitely have to go back to school because different thing. But if you're in, I don't know, finance, if you're in finance, marketing, sales, and office administration, and many other marketing and all that, you don't necessarily need to go back to school. Even IT. You don't necessarily have to go back to school. You focus on building skills and experience. Then the career path will unfold. So that's what I would recommend is a lot of people do not understand what skills to acquire. But once you have a list and you tackle them one by one, build some experience, then your path will unfold and you never know where that path will take you. In most cases, it'll take you to a better place than where you're today. And I hope that makes sense.
It does. And to me, it just slows down what seemed to be before sort of some insurmountable barriers. Because you can acquire skills in a variety of different ways. There's online courses, there's certifications. You can learn it through volunteer work. So you have more avenues available to you, which is exciting. What about, I'd love to know from you if there's sort of a glaring error, the single biggest mistake made by those that are looking to make a pivot. If there's just something that you see that is really putting them on the wrong path.
Right. I think the biggest mistake is not building a strong foundation and creating a story around it. So intention is one thing. Yes, you want to switch from, let's say, sales to marketing, but just because you have the right intention and you have the attitude and work ethic doesn't necessarily mean someone will give you a shot. So you need to build a strong foundation. So what I did was I built a blog. I got very much deep into content marketing and I continued to work in sales. And when the opportunity came up with the right company, I presented a case study a proposal to my boss, CEO of the company, saying, "This is what I can do. This is what I have done, and here's why I would be a good fit for this new role." And and it was actually a surprise, and I'm glad I did. I went from that company, went from a sales account executive to leading the demand generation team or growth marketing team for that startup. And that's just because I built a foundation. I showed that I have a willingness to learn. I have an avenue, a blog that is growing, and then I built a story and how I can help them bridge that gap. So I think that is really important. So what I'm talking about is, if I can summarize, is you have to show you have some experience. So if you're a developer, just another scenario I would say is, let's say you wanted to become an app developer and right now you are a graphic designer, or let's say you work in retail. And the best way to showcase a foundation is saying that you build a couple of apps. And then this is the reason you wanted to work in this industry. This is what you have done. This is how you have acquired the foundation. And this is why this particular employer can benefit by hiring you over others. So it's building a story around what the skills and the experience you've acquired.
I love that. The story for me really does connect the dots for the person that you're making the pitch to. Otherwise, they have no reason to understand how the jump you want to make makes sense. And I did something similar when I was launching my resume writing business. I did resumes for free for a while, just to, I've been writing them for years, but never sort of officially, and, got a portfolio under my belt so that I could go and work for some companies for a while. So there's lots of ways to do that. But the foundation, but I do think the story is key to showing you have the willingness to learn and you took the initiative to get the experience.
Yes, exactly. And I think that also makes you stand out when you're in front of an employer, because then a hiring manager is going to look at you and say, wow, despite having a full-time job and something else, you learn this part-time. So that just shows a lot of things: your character, your work ethic, your willingness to go after what you want. So your story automatically talks about all the soft skills you have, right? I mean, I think we're going away from the age where you have to mention the soft skills you have. Like, I'm sick and tired of hearing people saying, I'm a good team player, I'm detail oriented.
Yeah.
But
yeah, show it to me. Don't tell me.
That exactly.
No, I love that. And also the story shows minimizes the risk that the employer is going to take. Because it is a risk for them to hire someone that they perceive doesn't have experience.
Right.
So, and maybe we just talked about this, but is there any additional advice you might give someone who is contemplating making a career pivot?
Yeah, I can give some advice and also give an illustration to get the point across. So I would strongly recommend start a side hustle and test it out. Because I'm not going to recommend anyone take a risk, quit their job that is they're paying their bills or mortgage and just jump something, because, hey, you might find out you don't even like that new field, right? And so one advice I forgot to mention is, just because you read about something doesn't mean, or your friend has made a switch doesn't mean you will enjoy it. So the best way to test it out is, start a side hustle. See if you really enjoy it. In my case, when I was doing that as a side hustle, I really enjoyed it. And I said, I can actually I can do this full time and I can continue doing this. And I'm glad I did that and tested it out. I've also done other side hustles, which I did not like, and I'm quickly abandoned them. So I have similar to mine. I have an example of a friend who did the same thing. He got a degree in psychology, and what he did is he built a blog. He did some Facebook ads for free for other people. Then he got a job. Using that experience, he broke into digital marketing, and now he has a strong career in digital marketing. And I just want to give a quick example in case someone is wondering, saying, hey, that applies to both of you. How does that apply to me? Let me give you a hypothetical example. Let's say you're an accountant and you have a flair for art or graphic design. So you want to get into graphic design. So how would you make that switch? So I think in 12 to 18 months, you can definitely make the switch. So here's what I would recommend. Go to a marketplace like Fiverr. Actually, go to a marketplace like Fiverr or Upwork. Do not worry about how much money you make. Bid really low for projects and start getting 1 or 2, 3 clients under your belt. Build a portfolio. Once you build a portfolio in 3 to 6 months, you have something to prove. Now, using that, you can now go to an employer and say, listen, I know you're going to look at my resume and say I'm an accountant, but look at what I've done in the last 6 months for 5 different clients. Look at the logos I've designed. Look at the websites I've designed. If you give me a shot, I can do this full time for you, and I would make a big impact. And that really makes someone trust you more because you're proving that you can do the work. So that's what I would recommend. Test it out. There are many avenues you can test it out. Build a portfolio. I think you mentioned this moment back saying that before you became a resume writer, you wrote out many resumes for free. So you build a portfolio. You can actually go and charge money for it. Same thing I would recommend. If your goal is to become a full-time graphic designer, that's the path I would recommend. And the same applies to any other careers as well.
No, I agree. And one thing that you keep highlighting that I think might be worth pointing out, you talk about you approach the hiring manager. And I've always felt that when it comes to searching for jobs, applying online is a brutal process, but I think it's even harder for career changers. I recommend they bypass applying online absolutely as sort of that first point of entry and try to get in front of people directly because they don't have the direct years of experience that someone else might. They're not going to do as well applying online. They've got to get in front of someone and make the case that that person is. People are more willing to take risks on hiring career changers where applicant tracking software it isn't geared to do that.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's 2020 and people still do the spray and pray approach. Mm-hmm. I'm not discounting job boards because a lot of companies I work for, if it was not for job boards, I would have never known that company existed. And I really had great careers with those companies. So I'm not discounting the place to look for jobs. However, the way you apply for jobs should change. And for example, whether it's a human recruiter or even an ATS, an applicant tracking system, especially if you're making a career pivot, there's a chance of you going through that. It becomes very, very, very hard. So there are free tools like LinkedIn. LinkedIn will tell you everything about any person. So let's use the graphic designer example. The person who hires a graphic designer is usually a creative director or art director. Find out who the art director for that company is or companies in your area and send them a quick message on LinkedIn or an email saying, hey, I don't want to bother you for long, but could you take a look at my portfolio? And if it makes sense, I would be happy to see if I can do something for you, right? I'm paraphrasing it, but that's all it takes because people like this are busy. Instead of asking for an interview, instead of asking for a resume, send them a quick portfolio. And if they like it, they'll give you a shot. And one more advice I would give is, let's say you have a dream employer and there's nothing wrong with that. Let's say you want to work for that company. Ask them to hire you for a contract or a freelance project before they give you full-time as well.
Yeah, and let them test drive you out.
Exactly. And you can only do this if you go directly to the hiring manager, not through applying through an ATS or a job board. So I'm glad you brought that up and it's worth mentioning. Don't get disheartened.
And that test drive thing, I just got off the phone today with someone who wants to pursue a career in research, and they got a job as a volunteer at the Cleveland Clinic in a lab. And I thought, it would never have occurred to me that the Cleveland Clinic would accept volunteers, but they did. And she got to observe, and they got to establish some relationships and build some trust. So it's it's really amazing what companies will do when they don't have to pay you a lot of money. So,
Yeah.
what if I would have some? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to confirm what you said. I like the sample or something to give them. And you brought up risk. Hiring someone, I've been on both sides. Hiring is a risky process for an employer. They have to go through checks and they have to give you, benefits and all that. So it's a tough decision. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And they don't want to make the wrong decision. And what best way to reduce the risk by showing that you can do the work, right? So I really like it. I think it's do a quick project, show that you can do the job, and you're definitely standing out, because I can guarantee you, 100 people who are applying for the job are not doing that.
Yep. And so maybe this sort of segues into this question, and we might have already answered it, but I'll throw it out there anyway. We talked a lot about people that are getting ready to embark on a career change. What about people that have been going at it, trying to land a job in their new field or new industry, and it is just not going well? How do you recommend they regroup?
I think the best thing they can do is seek out advice. And sometimes people are surprised by how helpful people are. I've been surprised by how helpful people are. Of course, if you're reaching out to someone, trying to sell them something or get a job, most people have their backs against the wall. But it's not impossible to find someone who in that industry who can give you advice. For example, there are so many events, the networking events you can go to. And of course, I've mentioned LinkedIn, but in your industry, there are so many events that happen. Some of them are meetups. Some of them are free events. Some of them are events that you have to pay to. You go bump into someone who's working in that industry and you just pick their brain and say, listen, can I ask you for an advice? This is what I'm trying to do. And you look like you have a lot of experience. Would you mind if I can pick your brains over coffee? And 9 out of 10 people would say yes to that, because you're not, and people like to help. And that's the whole, if you look at the whole mentorship, in order for a mentorship to happen, there's a mentor and a mentee. And as people become more and more successful, they want to help others as well. They get a personal satisfaction. So if you're trying to switch careers and you're unsuccessful, there's many ways to do this. You can do it offline through events, or go to LinkedIn, look at people's work history. And if you notice someone has made an amazing switch, reach out to them. And most people are willing to help. More than willing.
No, yeah, I agree. It's funny with the paid conferences. Several years ago, I started investing in going to one conference a year. And while I got a lot from the speakers, I got twice as much value from being able to talk to other attendees, and through little side conversations, just got so much advice. And now I'm in a position to give it back as well. But that was worth the investment.
Yeah, if I can give a quick personal story, there's a gentleman. I was on his podcast. He was on my podcast, and I live in Toronto, so he happened to be in Toronto for another conference. He invited me for breakfast. I went for breakfast, and I offered to pay for breakfast. I wanted to pick his brain. I was very honest with him. Listen, you've been very successful doing what you're doing. We are in similar businesses. I am still doing this part-time. What can I do? And he gave me one advice. It was not even about strategy. He said, this is what I do. And I followed that advice, and that has given me a strong path of where I want to take my career, my business to. So we can all come up with examples, but and people are still hesitant to reach out. And I hope your story and my story encourages them to just take the first step, and so they can also get that help they need.
That's right. No, all they could do is say no. There's no downside in asking.
Exactly.
So this next question I get a lot because I do work with more senior job seekers, people that are concerned about discrimination. But it can go beyond age, too young, too old. There's ethnicity and gender discrimination, all of that. Do you think that this is an added burden or concern to those that are looking to make a pivot? And how what advice do you have on that topic?
So I just want to quickly say, I think discrimination is career agnostic. So, I mean, I don't want to be the one to say that there is no discrimination or bias. I want to use the word bias. There's always a bias towards different types of bias, that many of it is subconscious, and we've all experienced it. And also, if anyone is on the other side, they also exhibit some type of bias. So that is regardless if you're trying to get promoted, getting a new job, or even if you're trying to switch careers. So let's just address that. When it comes to switching careers or career pivot, I think the biggest bias would be the skepticism when someone looks at your experience, that you're jumping from one career. So yeah, hiring managers and recruiters will be skeptical. And I think we have covered a few ideas. If you can show examples or a portfolio that you can, and what you have done in the past and your experience, then you can overcome that. I think the advice to overcome is always the same. Build skills, build experience, show a portfolio, show initiative, then you can overcome that. However, no matter how much skepticism someone has about your skills.
Yeah, and you might not be able to overcome the skepticism. That's, with some people, that's just beyond your control. But all it takes is one person. And you're right, skills, experience, initiative in that story. Yeah.
Exactly. I like. I just want to build on what he just mentioned. Not everybody would be the good fit, and I wanted to bring that up because I am a firm believer. I personally don't subscribe to the whole dream job idea. I subscribe to a career idea, and I'll tell you why. Because even if you go back to 2010, there were certain companies that were the top choice for employees worldwide. And now some of the same companies are going through different type of scandals and all that. So they are no longer favorable, right? So there is no such thing as a dream job. I believe that because companies change. That same job company you thought would be good, a new CEO or a new manager comes and you probably don't like that job anymore. So I would encourage people to focus on your dream career, meaning for me, a dream career is no matter every company I work for, I have a good experience and it is helping me shape who I want to become in the future. So when you are focused on one or two companies and they are skeptical and they don't hire you, you get disheartened, but that should not be the end of the world. There are hundreds of different companies, big and small. And, you don't necessarily have to work for a big company. You can work for a small company and be happy. And here's the best part. You don't even need to work for a company in your city. Remote jobs are rising, meaning
they really are. True.
And that's the future as well. So be more open. Don't be... the same advice I would give to people dating as well will apply to your job. Don't be so caught up on that company. And if someone is skeptical, that's fine. I remember in 2015, 2016, I applied for a company and went to four different times. I applied for that company. Twice I went to the final round over the course of 3-4 years. Did not get the job. And in retrospect, I'm really glad I did not get the job because I would be in a totally different career right now. I'm really grateful and happy today. So I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to build on that. If there is skepticism, move on. Someone else will give you a shot. And maybe that's the type of person or company you want to work for who believes in your skill set and what you want to do rather than someone you're trying to appease.
Yeah, and you're not the first person I've seen that has compared job search, dating, and all of the apps and all that are available for that. So I want to ask you this next question. Let's say someone comes to you and says, okay, I only have room for 2 tools that in my toolkit to make a career switch. What do you think that they need?
I would say LinkedIn is a great example. Everybody's on LinkedIn. If they're not, they should be. And the reason I say that, you can easily see someone's career path. And I find that people who have done a career path are more open to hiring people who have had a career path. Meaning, I'm a person who has done a career pivot. So when I saw someone with an unconventional, long, non-linear path, I would give them at least a chance for an interview or a phone conversation. So you can easily find that on LinkedIn. If someone has been with the same company for 10 years and they've done 20 different roles, they are they value something else. They value loyalty, they value stability. So, usually looking at someone's work experience on LinkedIn can tell you a lot about that type of person that you're going to be interviewing with.
That's really good advice. Yeah.
And I personally, for me, I would try to choose people, like if I want to work for someone, I try to look for people who have a similar mindset about risk and career change that I do, because I know that'll be a good fit. So that's LinkedIn. I would also recommend a lot of these freelancing marketplaces like Fiverr and Upwork. You can go and test out, see what other people are actually charging, what type of clients they're getting. And also you can set up an account there and start doing it, start getting some clients to build a portfolio.
I love that. And the idea of using the LinkedIn career history to sort of glean insight into their career path, that's a great place to identify people to talk to about how they made the pivot into what you think you want to do. I think those people will be much more open to giving you, allowing you to pick their brain a little bit than, had a more traditional career path.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add a quick anecdote or my personal experience. In all the years there's only one person who's actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, listen, I saw your profile. I saw the changes you made. I want to do the same. I forgot what he was working in. I think he was in finance. He said, I want to get into digital marketing. Can I pick your brain?" So I had a call with him, laid down the exact 30 minutes, told him exactly what I did. And I was happy to help. At the same time, I've had numerous people who said, "I need a job. Can you look at my resume?" Some people just blast their resumes to strangers and all that. I ignore all of it because people don't want, people get a little uncomfortable when you go directly and say, "I want to get a job," but versus someone who says, "I've seen you've done a career path change. Can you advise me?" I personally have helped people. I'm sure other people will do the same.
I'm the same way. Yeah, those kinds of blunt asks like that just sort of rub me the wrong way, but I've always been willing to share advice and guidance. And if that leads to helping them get a job, great. But no, totally agree. So Nissar, this is my very last question. It's my favorite one. So you have 2 podcasts, you have your blog, your publication. What is next for you in 2020?
So one of the major transitions I made in mid 2019 is I switched from full-time employment to self-employed. So that's something that is many years in the making. So has been a side hustle for many years. Now it has become, I spend half of my time on it right now, full-time as a self-employment, as an entrepreneur. I also spend the other half of my time freelancing. I enjoy doing both of these. So in the future, my goal is obviously to grow CareerMetis. So I've made the transition from employee to self-employed. The next transition I want to make from self-employed to an entrepreneur. And I think that'll happen when I grow it to a point where I can outsource and hire employees and scale. So that's going to be my focus for not only 2020, but also for the next 3 to 4 to 5 years.
That is exciting. I can't wait to see the avenues that CareerMetis grows into. Nissar, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. You've shared this wonderful, I think very hopeful advice for people that are looking to make a change, maybe aren't satisfied with their current job. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. And I'm always happy to share. And I'm also thank you very much for having me on the show.
So if people want to connect with you, do have your blog and your LinkedIn profile. You have CareerMetis.com and your LinkedIn URL. Are those the 2 best places to learn more about you and your work?
Yes, absolutely. And I always I say this and it is true. I respond to every email, every LinkedIn message, even though
you're so good at that.
Even if my response is curt, and even if I'm not interested, I'll tell you not interested. So I'm not saying that to your audience. Just say I make it.
This is when you won't get ghosted.
You won't get ignored, but you will get a response. So LinkedIn and my website are the best two ways.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SKIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.